Hi everyone, this is BritSimon. I'm here in the countryside, beautiful location actually. Um, but I'm here just for horse riding with my daughter, so I thought I'd make a video while I'm enjoying the scenery and waiting for her. So I'm going to talk about the quota process, the process by which the 55,000 visas are split up amongst the regions, and also some of the other issues based on that same principle. So, for example, which countries are ineligible, not eligible to participate in the lottery, and why that is. And I thought it might be interesting for some of you. I don't intend to give a lot of fine detail. I want to try and stay reasonably high level, although it's a complex subject. So if you don't want to know how this all works, you don't need to. It's just for people that find this sort of information interesting. Okay, so to understand the process of the allocation of visas, you need to sort of firstly understand the principle behind the lottery. It's called the diversity visa lottery. The point of diversity in this sense is to split up visas and to bring people from underrepresented countries to the USA. The intention is they don't want all of the immigration, all of the immigrants to come from one or two particular countries or even one or two particular regions. They prefer to bring people from all over the world. And the diversity visa, although it's a fairly small part of the overall immigration allowance, I'm glad it exists. It does give opportunities to people that would have no opportunity otherwise because they can't come through other channels. Okay, so understand that principle as you're listening to what I'm about to explain in terms of how the process works. So one of the questions that people often have is, I come from this country. I come from the UK. Why is the UK not able to participate in the lottery? How about China? How about Bangladesh? How about any of these countries? Brazil? Why has my country been excluded from the lottery? Okay, well that's a good question to start with. Basically, the reason for that is they take the immigration numbers from the previous 5 years for all the countries, and they look at the immigration for family-based, immediate relative and employment-based immigration, and they add those up. Now, if a particular country has had, during the previous 5 years, for the latest statistics available, during the previous 5 years, a total of immigrants in those three categories, immediate relative, family-based, and employment-based, if the total is more than 50,000 for the previous 5 years for one particular country, then that country becomes ineligible for the lottery, because the lottery is designed to encourage other countries to send immigrants, or rather immigrants to come from other countries, right? And so those countries that are above 50,000, they're seen to already have enough immigrants coming to America. Why give them more, right? Why promote more immigration from those countries? That wouldn't be causing diversity, right? That's just getting the same countries, the people from the same countries in. So that's why some countries become ineligible. Now, those numbers go up and down, obviously, over a 5-year period. So you could have a country, for example, that is on the borderline of that 50,000. Perhaps, they're in the lottery 1 year and then they're made ineligible the next year, because 1 year they had, the previous 5 years they had a count of 55,000, and then for some reason that dips below 50,000, it maybe goes to 45,000, and so that country would become eligible again to participate in the lottery. That has happened. There are countries that we could look at like that. But there are many other countries, for example, take the UK, take India, take Brazil, China, the ones I mentioned earlier. They send so many immigrants to the USA. Those countries will probably never be able to send immigrants through the diversity lottery again, because they're already so well represented by family-based immigration or employment-based immigration and so on. Okay, so that's the first question, right? Then the next question is, okay, how do they split up the 55,000 visas? In fact, over the last few days, I've had people even suggesting that that doesn't happen, that they don't split up the visas in some sort of quota-based way. Some people even think that I was pulling this information from the sky. But this is all described in the INA, the Immigration and Nationality Act, in a section called 203C. In that section, it describes the formula, it describes the method by which the quotas are calculated for each region. And so I'm going to explain the formula in as simple a way as I can put it. So what they do is they, again, they look at the 5 years history or the previous 5 years. It's a rolling 5-year window, and it's only using the statistics that are available based on the data that they have available to them. So right now, it's in April 2022. The latest statistics we're using right now are the 2020 fiscal year statistics. So there's a natural trailing lag. Okay, so the impact of 2020, which was a very low immigration year because of COVID, and the impact of 2021 has only partially been felt in the numbers so far. And so that's an important factor that I'll come back to in a little while. Using the 5 years worth of data, they then figure out the flow of immigrants from each of the 6 regions, right? The 6 regions are Africa, Europe, Asia, Oceania, South America, and North America, right? They figure out the total flow of immigrants into the USA over a 5-year combined window. And they figure out the low admission or high admission regions. Now, basically, a high admission region is classified as a region which has more than 1/6 of the total immigrants coming to America within a 5-year period. Now, at the moment, the only high admission regions are Asia and South America. The other regions, that's Africa, Europe, Oceania, and North America, they're all low admission regions. Okay, this is nothing to do with countries at the moment. This is purely about the regions. Okay, now, so what they do is they say, okay, if and this is about the sort of the numbers we're talking about. If 80% of the immigrants come from the 2 high admission regions, right, and 20% come from the other low admission regions, they flip those numbers, and so they say, okay, for the diversity visa lottery, because 80% come from the high admission regions, we don't want so many of them, so we're only going to take 20% of the visas in the diversity visa lottery and give them to those 2 regions, and we'll take 80% of the visas, of the 55,000 visas, and share those amongst the low admission regions. So they're actually flipping the numbers, right? So if the numbers were, if the previous flow of immigrants was 75-25, then the low admission regions would be getting 75% of the 55,000 visas. Now, right now, for example, it's around about 80%, 82%, 80 to 82% is the rough approximation. I haven't done the flow numbers recently, but you can rest assured it's more or less in that range, right? So that means that between Africa, Europe, Oceania, and North America, they're getting 80% of the visas, approximately. Okay, so how do they then decide which regions should, how much of the visas should go to each of the regions? How would they split them amongst the regions within the low admission and the high admission regions? Well, what they do is they then consider the population of the countries that are involved and eligible to participate. Okay, so they add up the total population of all of those countries, and they'll have a population therefore for the region of Africa, the region of Europe, the region of Oceania, and the region of North America. They'll total those up, and they'll figure out the percentage split between those regions, and then they divide up the 80% they're going to give to the low emission regions by the percentage split based on the population. Okay, bit complicated, I know, but that's what the formula says. And conversely, for the high admission regions, which, as I say, there's only South America and Asia, they do the same thing. They work out the population of those two regions, they determine the percentage split between those two, and that means that Asia gets a lot more visas than South America. But bearing in mind that that split is only splitting about 18 to 20% of the available visas anyway. That's why Asia gets a relatively small number of visas, and so does South America. So the formulas are based on population. They're based on the amount of people coming to America. It's a fairly complex formula, but it kind of works, right? Because the intention of the program is to give more visas, more of the diversity visas, to the regions and the countries that are less well represented, and in that way it works. Okay. I'm sure some of you by now are horrified, and you're sitting there in Asia and saying, well, that's unfair. Well, that's how it is, right? This is the game. There's no point in complaining about it. The law that was that established the diversity visa lottery was written way back in the late 80s, early 90s. And so, this is the way it works. There's no point complaining about the rules of the game when you want to, participate in the game. Okay, so so hopefully that's clear in terms of the way the quota is split up. Now, the other thing to bear in mind is that the quotas are not divided by countries; they're divided by regions, right? And why is that important? Well, people look at the selectee numbers every year and they see the country numbers, and they always think, every year I get this, where people feel those are the quotas or the number of visas allocated to those countries. And there is no such allocation. There's no country that has an allocation of any amount of visas where we say, oh, it must have this country, it must have this number of visas. There is a cap. Immigration in general has a 7% cap. And so since we're basing this on 55,000, which is an approximation, in DV 2022 the number is actually 54,850, but the 7% cap says no single country can take more than 7% of the visas within that class. So that means there's a 3,850 approximately cap on any single country that cannot be exceeded. That's not an allocation, that's not a quota, that's a cap. Okay, so it's not like, it's not like every country gets 7%. No, that's not what we're saying. It's a maximum cap that cannot be exceeded. Okay, so within the region, let's say within the region of Africa, your chance of selection is the same as every other country and every other person within that region. Well, sort of. That's what the rules say. It's supposed to be the same within a region. So the African region would have the same chance of selection, and a European region would have its chance of selection. Okay, and that depends on the number of people who enter the lottery and the number of visas available, or how many they select. Now, every year they over-select. They select around about 100,000 people, give or take a few thousand, right? In DV 2022, for instance, they selected 119,000. That really should have been too many, should be too many. But because many people don't proceed with the process, they over-select so that it allows for people that never proceed with the process, or that people get denied during the process, or, for whatever reason, or political situations that means that some people from some countries can't proceed. So they over-select in order to give themselves the best chance to issue the best number of visas. But they're not punished, the government are not punished in any way if they under-issue visas. They're not required by law to issue the full 55,000. They are, but they're obviously trying to do the best job they can. That's, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt. Okay, so I think I've covered most topics. So please understand, it's not by country. Very little of this is by country. It's got, very little to do with country, apart from the total population in the country that is added together within a region, etc. But the number of visas allocated is by region and not to specific countries. What other questions might you have? I think I've probably covered most of it. I hope. There's a couple of things I wanted to come back to. First thing, I said the chance of selection within the region is the same for everybody within the region. That's sort of true and sort of not true. There are some countries that have so many entries into the lottery that they are actually sort of capped during the selection process itself. And so take, for example, Ghana. Ghana's population is relatively small, but they get a huge number of entries into the lottery each year. And because of that, they're a very high percentage of the overall entries in the Africa region. So if Ghana were to get the full same percentage as every other country in the region, they would actually have far too many selectees, and we would just be wasting opportunities for other countries, right? So what they tend to do is they tend to cap the number of selectees in certain countries, and that would be Egypt and Ghana and some others. Uzbekistan, Ukraine have traditionally been capped as well in Europe. So there is this notion of a capped country during the selection process, and I'm not referring to the 7% cap on issuances. I'm referring to a cap that is imposed on the selection process itself, where they just cut off at a certain point. 6,000 selectees was kind of the magic number in DV 2022. There are no countries that have many more than 6,000 selectees. Ghana has less because the number of selectees chosen and capped is based on the cases, not the selectees, including derivatives. So Ghana's number, although it appears less than 6,000, is still a capped number. It's capped on the number of cases. Okay, so that's that thing, and I also wanted to come back to the effect, the impact that could be felt in the program over the coming years because of the COVID and in fact the Trump years as well. During 2019, 2020, 2021 and 2022, immigration in general is lower than it should be. There's about 1 million immigrants coming to the country each year, and that number got absolutely sort of stopped in March of 2020, and was impacted by various things that Trump was trying to do, and proclamations put in place, and Biden didn't lift those proclamations fast enough, frankly. And so there was a pretty radical decline in the number of immigrants over the time period I just mentioned, from 2019 through to 2021, at least, or maybe 2022. And so when that decline shows up in the 5-year rolling number, which will start happening fairly soon, because as I mentioned earlier, 2020 is already sort of impacted a little bit, right? Because the COVID pandemic started in March of 2020, at least in North America, at least. When that shows up, it's going to alter the numbers quite a bit. It could alter the number of countries that are eligible to participate in the program. And if there's a country that has something like 50 or 60,000, 70,000 immigrants over a rolling 5-year window, and it was just above that 50,000 magic number, that country is likely to dip below the 50,000 magic number in the next few years because of the impact of those sort of sparse couple of years of low immigration. So we could see some countries that have been previously excluded from the lottery coming back in. Now, I don't think it's going to be any of the big countries like, that were relatively recently excluded, like Nigeria or Bangladesh or any of those. And I'm constantly asked, when is Nigeria coming back in? When is Bangladesh coming back in? I think there's too many immigrants from those countries to allow them to be included in the program, in the diversity program. So I don't think, I haven't looked at the numbers, but I don't think there's going to be enough of a dip that would qualify those countries. But there will be some other countries that will come back in that are relatively close to the borderline. So again, I haven't looked at which countries, I haven't sort of done that math, although I might spend some time on that in the coming days. But anyway, that will have it's a sort of a lagging impact. We won't feel that impact for another year to 2 years. And so it won't affect DV 2023 or 22 or 24 even, perhaps. It's probably going to impact us more in DV 2025 and beyond, right? And the impact of that will be felt for a few years. So, that's something to look out for. The other change that could happen, and this seems less likely to me, is that the percentage split, that 80-20 split between the regions could change, because perhaps some regions and some countries were more impacted by the decline in immigration than others. Okay, it doesn't really sort of logically sound correct to me. I think immigration in general was impacted. And so in that case, every country would have been impacted in the same way, although there were some specific impacts when Trump introduced what was obviously a Muslim ban, back in 2017, I think it was the original Muslim ban. So there would have been some impacts, but how much that impacted the program as a whole, I don't know. Yeah, that has yet to be seen. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Just using the time wisely and trying to explain this interesting topic, and hopefully it has been interesting to you. In a few days' time, we're going to be having DV 2023 will be starting, and some people in DV 2023 hopefully will look at this video and will get some information and knowledge from it to understand how the process works a little bit. But also you'll see some more videos from me over the next few days, which are intended to educate the DV 2023 folks as they come in. And I hope we would all agree, we wish them, the DV 2023 lucky winners, we wish them a sort of a better year than we've had in DV 2020, 2021 and 2022. It's been tough this last 2 or 3 years. It's been very hard. It's been very unfair. And whilst the legal teams are fighting to try and, get back some of the fairness, it's impossible to undo, much of the damage that's been done over the last 2 or 3 years. And so, unfortunately, some of the damage will always remain. But let's hope DV 2023 sees a better return to normal processing and that sort of thing. Let's just be hopeful about that, and best of luck to them. Okay, everybody, thanks for your time. Thanks for listening along. Please do make sure you're subscribed. I do want to say there are many YouTube channels you can get information from about the DV lottery. Some of them are good, most of them are not, to be perfectly honest. There's a lot of nonsense and misunderstanding spread by some of these channels. So if you want accurate information, please do follow along with me. I've been doing DV lottery since 2013. My blog is available, BritSimonSays.com. I've got a lot of articles and information there. including a description of this process that I'm talking to you about now, which is the quota process, but also many other topics. There's a lot of very good information there. So I do this for free. I don't charge anybody anything. I'm a previous DV lottery beneficiary myself. I was a derivative and got my green card through the diversity lottery, and I'm now an American citizen since I got my green card in 2014. So I became a citizen this year. So, you know, you couldn't be in better hands, frankly, than listening to me. If you hate me, if you don't like me, you know, that's fine. Listen to somebody else. But if you want good information, please come here and make sure you're subscribed. All right. Thank you then. Bye-bye now.